Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Purchasing Made Personal podcast. We have a fun one today, at least fun for our world in purchasing. And today we've brought on some members of the PO team. But before I introduce them, I wanted to kind of go over some of these numbers of what TIPS is handling and what the PO department is handling internally at TIPS, right? So starting off at the time of recording this, we are exactly halfway through our fiscal year. Since then, we have already done over 30,000 POs. So basically on track to do 60,000 POs for the year. That's 10,000 more POs from 2025 or last year. And that doesn't even include some of the things that we call microtransactions, where there might be one-off purchases from automated vendors or anything like that. We might get into that today, right? If we included those, it would be in the hundreds of thousands of purchase orders. Okay. Last year, TIPS closed over $3.2 billion of vendor sales and member purchases, right? As we are standing right here halfway through this fiscal year, we're already 25% ahead of that. And why am I bringing all these numbers up? Because I have two very important people here today. I have Vicki and Karen, who are the ones behind the TIPS PO email address, right? For those of you who don't know, that is the point of contact for handling purchase orders, even pricing. We do have another bids email, right? But Vicki, Karen, why don't y'all explain maybe what your exact roles are at TIPS?
Good morning, Michael. My name is Vicki, and I, along with a coworker, Carrie, process live purchase orders on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, all day long. We process the purchase orders that get sent to us by the members that need us to verify their quotes from our TIPS vendors, and process those POs and get those POs over to the vendor so the member can get their product or their service.
And Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen. And my counterpart, Christy, and I are mainly pricing compliance and requests. So, what that looks like is anytime a member is wanting to see a vendor's contract pricing, we are providing that. And when vendors are requesting to update their pricing, add new products to their pricing, etc., we are facilitating that.
Absolutely. Well, welcome to the podcast, guys. It's going to be great. All those numbers I mentioned before is touched by this team of people and the people that are helping them. So what will be 60,000 POs in 1 year will be handled by these two people and their counterparts there at the TIPS corporate office. That just, every time I see those numbers, I tremble. And because if I was having to deal with that, guys,
Reed trembled too.
y'all don't want me over that. You want me talking to people, right? But
Yeah.
it's astonishing. It's just amazing how much you guys are able to do and how efficient it happens. And we're going to talk about that today. So, I guess, Vicki, right? For the baseline of the conversation, can you talk us through what we internally call the TIPS PO process, kind of from start to finish?
Sure. So the preferred process is what we call the preferred process, is that a member will reach out to one of our TIPS vendors, and we have lots of them, and get a TIPS quote. And what we mean by a TIPS quote is your quote needs to reference TIPS and that contract number that belongs to that vendor. And then once they get that quote, they will create a purchase order on their site, and they'll send the purchase order and the quote to TIPS PO. And then once we receive it in our email box, we will open it, we'll look at it. We open up that quote, we go to the vendor's pricing, we make sure that everything is the same, that whatever they've quoted basically is what we find on their pricing forms. If it's not, then we will reach out to the vendor and ask them to relook at that quote and see what we're missing. Sometimes it's just simply we just need to update the pricing. Maybe it's been a little while, prices are changing, etc. And then when everything is good and we feel that it is in compliance, then we process that purchase order through our PO system. Once we do that and hit submit, Our members get a member letter, which is a letter saying that we've done our due diligence. We have made compliance on this purchase, and they can hold on to that letter for their auditing purposes in the future. Then on the other side, the vendor gets an email from us, and it's a copy of the member's purchase order. So they can take that purchase order and fulfill the order or go do whatever the services that they need to do. And then that's it. Then we're done.
That's great. And all of that um, might seem cumbersome to someone who's hearing that the first time, but honestly, that's what Tips is doing on the agency's behalf, right?
Right.
Essentially, once they send in that email to Tips PO, that's what we're doing, right? Instead of having it,
Mhm.
right? And so
Right.
it becomes a streamlined process because, when a cooperative is not used, they're doing that themselves. They
Right.
being the agency or the vendor, even in tandem with the agency. So what you guys are doing is really saving them a lot of time.
Right.
And I mean, we're subject matter experts, so to speak. We're doing this day in, day out. And the more you do something, the better you get at it, right? So where we're doing this thousands of times a month, an agency might do this once or twice a month.
There's a lot of vendors that we have good relationship with that we do see quotes for on a daily basis. So we know what to look for, we know what should be there, and that really helps the member because it saves them time, just like you said.
Absolutely. So what time through the process, kind of mention it, but I want to make sure it's clear. What time do members and even vendors start to engage tips, right? And the tips PO process when they're working out some type of purchase?
Sometimes if the member, maybe forgot to attach the quote, then we have to get back with them and say, please send us the quote so we can verify your purchase. There might be a time when the contract number is not an applicable contract number. They may have, transposed a couple numbers or left off a couple numbers. It needs to be right. We need to have it to be exact. There might be some times that we do have to reach out to the vendor because we're not seeing these items on their pricing forms, and then that's when Karen and her team get involved and they update the pricing form so that we can finish our process.
Yeah. And it sounds like we're sticklers, but here's the deal, and this is kind of how we put it out in the when we're talking and training people is Tips is very audit focused, right? Not our audits, right? When an agency uses Tips, it's their audit responsibility to get things done appropriately, right? So when we do this, I love how we call the preferred method. There's ways to fix it. My gosh, have we fixed some things before, right? But the preferred purchase method is very forward thinking. Across the country, there are agencies that have a 5-year term on something that can be audited. A lot of them are 7, and I've even seen up to 10 years where a purchase can be audited. And we don't want that called 9 years from now saying, hey, what happened here, right?
Right.
So that's something that I always keep front of mind when I'm talking about the due diligence or the competitively sealed bids or all the stuff that involves the cooperative is we're thinking in the future on behalf of the agency. So with that in mind, what are some of the key pieces of information that don't need to be missed when submitting a PO through Tips?
The main two things that we need is that the vendor is actually a tips vendor
Yep.
and that the contract number, and I say applicable contract number, is on the quote. Some of our vendors have multiple contracts. Some of them don't really pertain to what the member is purchasing. So they got to be careful that they know what they're purchasing, that they know what contract they need to use. And that information needs to be on the quote and on the PO. That's what makes it compliant.
Yeah, and it's very straightforward. We'll have other times when we can go look at vendor profiles and things like that. But just like when an agency is going out to bid, we have scopes of work. We have, things that a contract is intended to be used for, right? So, and are there things that are broad enough we'll say, stretch in and cover services? Of course. But, the common is, when a vendor does two different things in two different markets, they'll have a tips contract for both. And we don't need the consulting contract referenced when construction is involved, or you name it, right? So that's common, and that's some issues. So other than you keep mentioning the applicable contract number, so I imagine that comes up a lot, Vicky.
It does.
Any other mistakes or problems that, I mean, when it happens, it slows down the process, right? But
Right.
what else has kind of been happening large scale that you might want to warn the agencies about?
Some of the things are our vendors aren't familiar with their pricing forms. Sometimes, we have a lot of reps that work for the vendors, and sometimes they're not familiar with their own pricing forms, and they'll send over what we call a lump sum quote. That quote is just, $75,499 with a bunch of product on there. And we need that broken out because that's how their pricing is. So our kind of our mantra is what you put on the quote needs to be found on your pricing.
Right.
Yeah.
And Vicky, now might be a good time also to bring up resellers. That's another.
Right. So we can jump right into that. So we also have a lot of vendors, mainly our furniture vendors who have resellers, also known as dealers in their world, I believe.
Yep.
And so a lot of times that reseller is using a contract from one of our awarded vendors, and they're not quite sure how that process works. And we get a lot of paperwork that's not necessary and not correct. So the vendors need to make sure that they um, are aware that the resellers are using their contract and that they're adhering to our reseller process, which can all be found on our website. We have all that documentation on our website. New forms have been updated recently to streamline the process, and that's another thing that slows us up is when that reseller doesn't quite adhere to what they need to do.
Or understand how they're supposed to do it is the
Right.
biggest
Yes.
challenge.
Oh yeah, I encounter this all the time. Because is the program manager's job is all about training, right? And so, teaching not just the agencies, the agencies obviously need to know what a cooperative is, but that's their world. So it's a short hop, skip, and a jump to then understand the tips process, right?
Mm.
And we're here to explain that all day long. But for the vendors, especially vendors selling both to the private sector and the public sector, like things that you mentioned, right? Where we need an itemized invoice, that's a requirement for most public agencies across the country, not just tips, right? Or
Right.
explaining the reseller process as to why. And it all points back to that same thing we talked about was, look, you don't understand. This agency wants to use tips because this agency is putting on some of that audit responsibility through our tips contract. So let's look forward a little bit to the needs of an auditable purchase. And that's been the common misunderstanding. That's very easy with training or whatever. But that's a big hurdle for vendors selling in this space for sure. So switching gears here, one thing that we all embody here at Tips, purchasing made personal, right? Our own tagline. And I imagine, because every time I'm on the phone with you guys, y'all talking more and more about who you've just helped. Do y'all have some stories or examples you might want to bring in that we can lean on, of times that the PO team helped solve a problem for a member or even a vendor, and what types of things are happening when it goes wrong? You know?
Um, Honestly, and I mean this very honestly and sincerely, I think the four of us, Karen, I, Christy, and Carrie, we help members and vendors all day long. Uh, so there's really no big story that that has jumps out at us. I don't think, Karen. I don't know if you have anything, but
Not
it's we I, and I think that's what makes us for lack of a better word, popular with our members and our
Oh,
vendors,
sure.
is that they can pick up the phone and call us, and we will answer. We will return an email right away. If we don't know the answer, we'll find out from someone what the answer is. And I think we do that on a daily basis all day long.
Right. I mean, every time I'm either in the corporate office or calling you guys or anything like that, it seems like there's always something going on. But I think that's one of the best things about tips is that even that tips PO email address, that's not going to a bot, right? Or something
No.
that's going to the team, right?
Yeah.
And to real people. That makes such a huge difference sometimes. And even people, I'm sure, instead of emailing directly, they'll just send a question to the tips PO inbox, even though
Mhm.
that's not what it was designed to do,
Right,
but
right.
it's what we do, right?
Mm.
It's what it's turned into. So yeah, I mean, in the world of public procurement, the problems just list and list and list and list and list. But we're
And
here to help in any way
I
we
don't think
can.
we have really had anything so hard that we haven't been able to fix or correct or get the answer to. We know, which is great. I think we have really good processes up and down our hall here at the corporate office, and they all work, and we all know what they are. So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. Just me the big problem, you mentioned it one quick time before, but the big problem is, are they a tips vendor? Or are they trying to sell to a member where they don't have a tips contract? That's most
Right.
often when it gets handed to me, right? And yes, the competitive sealed bid process is somewhat rigorous for a new vendor, but even like you said, there's never a problem where we can't fix it, even if our bid schedule doesn't allow for it this month, right? I'm saying this month because with tips, we're putting out about 5, bids a month. So I'll get with that vendor. I'll see what the need is. I'll see what's possible, and then say, okay, look, we cannot process this at this time. However, if you would like to respond to competitive sealed RFP, if this agency truly does want to go through tips, which most of the time they do, because it is such an easier process for them, I can get them awarded because tips is putting out so many competitive sealed bids. I can get them awarded on tips before the agency could ever get them to respond to a local RFP. So that problem of there's never been a problem we can't fix. Sometimes it just takes a month or two, right?
Hmm. Yep.
But it's still, we're doing our best to meet the needs and desires of those agencies. So that's great. So, you know, what can members and vendors do? I don't care which side this is, right? How can they help ensure like a smooth and timely process? And maybe talk about the standard, PO response times, what can they do to help you, so to speak, preemptively when they're making their quotes and sending an email?
Um, I would say, we, like I mentioned earlier, we revamped our PO process forms. Um, we kind of streamlined them, made them not so cumbersome, and really just follow that. Just it's, we need your PO, you need the contract number on there, we need the quote, needs to be a vendor, we need the vendor's contract number. If we have all that, that's great. And then maybe Karen, you can talk a little bit about the pricing. That's a big thing too, is just to make sure that the vendor has updated pricing forms.
Yeah. So go into a little bit of the pricing forums, Karen.
So oftentimes what we see is a member will reach out to one of our vendors and that vendor will provide a quote. But 3 of the 5 items that they've quoted are not on the pricing. So that, kind of halts the process because of the 5 items that we're trying to verify, we can only verify 2. The other 3 are not there. So we're then having to reach out to the vendor, ask the vendor to update their pricing, get those 3 items added before we can proceed. So a good rule of thumb for the vendor is if you're um, generating a tips quote to provide to a member, just kind of to Vicky's point earlier, make sure that quote mirrors your pricing and get ahead of it. If it's not on your pricing, go ahead and add them and send them over to our bids email address and request to update your pricing before that member's PO and quote hits our PO system for Vicky to process. And then there's no lag, no halt. It flows very efficiently and quickly.
I can see the questions coming in already, Karen, of, what do you mean we can add something to a contract, right? So what are the, I guess, and this is just we have a update pricing FAQ on the website. That's easy, just high level. So what does it take to update pricing? How can they update pricing? Just go into that for just a minute, because I can see the questions coming.
Sure, of course. So, per the terms of all of our vendor contracts, because our contracts are anywhere from 1 to 5 years in term. So, for the length of the contract, our vendors have the ability to either add new product as it becomes available or as they start offering it. They are able to update pricing. Like in the furniture world, it's nothing for a new furniture price list to come out at the first of every year, which is kind of what we're, in the thick of right now. So they are simply going to, if they have provided their pricing on pricing form 1 or 2, they can either just add additional line items to those Excel forms, or just highlight the pricing that is currently reflected on those Excel forms. If they have a website that provides pricing on this website, if they need to update that link, all they have to do is update the link on the pricing form and send it to us. If they have a supplemental catalog or a supplemental price sheet that went into effect, say January 1 of 26, all they have to do is forward that to us. So
Right.
there's many options. However you proposed your original pricing, you are able to update that pricing if needed and add to it if needed.
Right. And the thing is, your entire current catalog as a vendor, just address it, your catalog, as so long as it meets the scope of work of the TIPS contract,
Correct.
can be entirely added to TIPS at any given time. The one thing that grounds that, just to make it clear, the one thing that grounds it and keeps it true to the nature of the competitive bid is TIPS's bid at a minimum discount off. Right.
Correct.
And that varies based off across our 200 categories, and different age or different, areas have different margins, things like that. You're not making the same percentage of profit as you are for construction, as you are for furniture, as you are for Chromebooks. But
Technology.
each one, is set up for a percent discount off list price. Right. So that's what grounds it. So even though a vendor could add a new product line that launched a year after their contract was established, they're still going to be held to that percent discount off list.
Right.
And that's what grounds the competitive nature of that. So really good stuff. I love the process. So
and that minimum discount is self-imposed.
it is
That vendor is
self-imposed, and that's
to
how they respond. And
correct.
that's I think almost a little over 20% of the scoring and evaluation is based off that self-imposed discount, right?
Yes.
So all these things that are dealing with the competitive bid, but it is a self-imposed discount of how they choose to respond.
Correct.
But we hold them to it once and if they
Absolutely.
become awarded. So
Yep.
that's how we do that. Love it. Okay, so fun question. What's the fastest PO turnaround you guys have ever seen? That might be a Vicky question.
Of course
She
it
handles
is.
that one. Yeah.
I'm not going to give that detail out. Um, we can, I'll say we can get it done within a workday of
Yep.
an 8 to 4 workday. We can get your PO process. If we get it at 8 o'clock in the morning, it will probably be done the fastest by that afternoon.
Yep.
We ask that you give us 2 to 3 days to process what we call live POs. And that's only because of all these different scenarios that we've been talking about. If you send us a PO in the morning at 8 o'clock and it's urgent, I've got to have this done today, but then the pricing's not right or the contract number's not on the quote, then unfortunately we have to reject it and get it right, because again, that whole compliance piece, we're doing this for auditing purposes to make sure that everything is correct. So that could halt it. But if everything is good, pricing's good, quote's good, you're a member, they're a vendor, then we can pretty much, the fastest would be within the day.
Yeah. And the standard, like I said, it's always good to be ahead of everyone seems to always want it before a board meeting, right? Like board meeting's on Thursday. Well, that
Right.
means you should probably submit it to tips by Monday, right?
Right. Yeah.
I
Not
always, this
Wednesday
is,
afternoon.
oh my god, this is how I say it to the members when they ask me, and there's time, right? And so I said, look, our goal may be 24 hours, right? 24 hours from when we receive the PO. That seems pretty fair across all time zones, Eastern to West, all that stuff. I said, more than likely, if everything is right, you might get it before that. However, things like a weekend, things like a holiday, things like an error often occur, and they say, my goodness, well, how often are people messing up? I said, it might only be 1 out of 100 POs, but you got to understand we're doing 12,000 POs this year. So this month, right? So that's 120 POs that are probably getting messed up this month, right? Or whatever those stats might be. Okay. I said, so that 3-day window is the golden hour to where we're not going to have to stress out. You're going to be able to walk in calmly to your board meeting instead of them being fresh off the printer at 7 o'clock at night at your board meeting, So yeah, that 2 to 3 day window is a great buffer. And I would say you're more than likely going to get it back before then.
Yeah.
But we can't count on everything being correct because we
Exactly.
do see it get messed up. That's the reason we're having you guys on here today, to stay a little preemptive about it, right? So yeah, okay. So the team verifies the compliance, right? After that, it gets done between, they send it in, and somewhere between those 2 days or whatever, it gets verified. What is the next step after TIP sends that A-OK, right? What is the next step for the agency?
So the member will get an email back from TIPS PO with their member letter, what we call their member letter, their compliance letter. We tell them whatever you guys do on your side, you can print it out, put it with your PO, put it in a file, you can put it on your desktop, whatever you need to do, just hold on to it for those auditing reasons in case, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line. So they will do that. And then the vendor will get a copy of their PO. And then that's when the vendor will, you know, get the product ordered, get the product out to the entity. And then for the vendor side, once we process it, it goes directly into their account. So they can see it on their vendor portal. It's there.
Yep.
And then it also shows the admin fee. So whenever they get paid by the member, then they will turn around and pay TIPS the admin fee. And then that is a podcast for accounting.
I love it. And they're coming up too. They better get ready. No. So yes, no, that's great. So the thing is, here's the clippable moment, so to speak, on what I recommend. And you hit it on the nail. You need to save that that letter for your records. Okay. So the whole process, start to finish, is I always encourage agencies. I said, okay, go to the vendor profile on TIPS for you, whom you've selected, and download the RFP documents from our website, right? That includes typically 4 documents, unless there's addendums or things like that, or maybe construction has a bonding capacity, all these different things, they're there, right? But download the due diligence documents on the vendor profile, which will include the original bid request, the scans of our advertisements, all the things that make the competitive sealed bid down to the vendor signatures, right? Save that in your business office. Then you're going to, when it's time, send it into the TIPS PO team, and they're going to get you back that letter. Save that letter as the last piece of due diligence for that audit package, right? I had an agency who used one of our facilities vendors for a multi-million-dollar job, actually, to replace all of their auditorium lighting and their stadium lighting into energy efficient lighting, right? So quite encumbersome. They did it over a summer, right? Just sharing the timeline here. They did it over a summer while students were out. And because of the size of the purchase, right? Multi-million-dollars. I mean, by October, the auditor was in the door. Okay. And they called me 7:30 in the morning, almost scared. I mean, when auditors walk in, we get
Yes.
scared. Okay, that's what it is. Sorry to any auditors out there, but they're never good news. It's always medium news or bad. Okay, but they put the auditor on speaker with me at 7:30 in the morning. I said, okay, did you download the due diligence? Yes. Okay. Hand them those PDFs, 4 PDFs. I said, did you get the price verified through the TIPS PO team? And they did, because they're a good member, right? I said, okay, you got that verification letter. Print that off and put that right there with it and
Mhm.
hand it to the auditor. The
Yeah.
auditor reviewed it and was gone by 9 in the morning.
Nice.
That
Yes, sir.
that's what we want, right?
Yeah.
So when you follow these types of steps, when you do the verification, when you get the due diligence saved for your records, right? That is the perfect goal. Is because of the nature of that size, the auditors were definitely going to stop by and make sure that tax dollars and public use was appropriate. They
Right.
did. They reviewed the TIPS documentation, they reviewed the verification letter, and boom, less than 90 minutes and they were out of there. That is the goal for
Correct.
every tip purchase, in my opinion.
And
Right?
sometimes we do, we'll tell our members, sorry for the inconvenience, because we know, it's an inconvenience,
Oh,
back and forth
sure.
emails, but we want it to be in compliance. And, we do thank the vendors and the members for helping us to stay in compliance, because they're helping the vendor, the member, and tips. We all need to be in compliance. We all need to do it right. And it may take one or two extra steps, but there's a reason. There's what they say, a method behind the madness. There's a reason.
Yeah. And sometimes it
And
can be madness. Go ahead, Karen.
to that point, the beauty of the compliance letter is that the auditors recognize that it is a compliance letter from a nationally recognized purchasing cooperative, and that carries a lot of weight. We are taking on the responsibility of that compliance verification. And if the auditors want or require additional documentation, we can provide it.
And so quickly, and so what are the highlights on that letter that are saying, obviously pricing, right? But what else is a part of that letter that the auditors typically like?
Karen.
It's on the TIPS logoed letterhead, of course,
Yep.
and it has the vendor's name, the vendor's contract number, the effective dates of the contract.
Yeah.
It has the member identified, the date of the purchase order number, the amount of the purchase order, the name of the contract, and it just specifically says that we confirm that the product and pricing are compliant with their TIPS contract.
Exactly. So this is kind of how it's like. It just says this is Tip saying everything is reviewed. The vendor did not get a reneged contract at the time of purchase. Everything looks good, and it's essentially a bid award summary based on that agency adopting our competitive bid contract. Right? That's how the auditors see it. I just wanted your opinion on that, and in case I was missing anything. But no, it's a great piece of information to have.
Yes.
And we want you to get it because it's just included when you do that preferred reporting method, right? So with that, and you got this thing, you're preparing this letter. I know we've been hitting on pricing, right? And that's most of it, right? What else is the team taking the scan of the purchase order and the vendor quote? What else? What are we looking for? What is actually happening when we get that email at 8 a.m.? What's the checklist, so to speak?
Again, we make sure that the member is a member, because
Yep.
sometimes, members don't realize that they're not a member of TIPS. And so, we have to verify that they are a member. Then we verify that the vendor is a vendor. And if it's a reseller or, involved, then we need to look into that, make sure that that reseller is listed on the profile page of that vendor's, profile page. And then we look at the quote. We make sure that the contract number is on the quote. We make sure that, like we talked about earlier, that the quote, the items and the pricing mirror the pricing that we have on contract for that vendor. We, look for taxes, we look for freight. Those are things that the vendor does not pay the admin fee on. So we, make sure when we enter it, we deduct those.
Sure.
And then lately, as of the last few years, we've had some surcharges for that type of thing that we have to have documentation for those surcharges. So we make sure that's in the vendor's contract as well. And then, once we're satisfied that everything looks good, that the discount was given, if a discount is applicable, because there's not always
Sure.
a discount. But if there is, that they gave the discount, and then we're good, and then we process it.
Love it. And so with all those, and we've talked about some troubleshooting or things that we've experienced the most, if there's any other, like the key takeaways as we kind of wind down here, what are the key takeaways to members to remember about the PO process?
Send your PO with the
Yeah.
contract number, and
Right.
the PO with the contract number
Uh,
to TIPS PO.
Essentially, yeah, follow the TIPS member PO process.
Yes.
It's on every single vendor profile page.
Right.
Yes,
Just
it is.
click
Yep.
that. I have several agencies who print that off and tape it right to their wall,
Good.
right? So
Yes.
that's it. Is
Yep.
that PO process basically, as it says, steps 1 through 3 is what's happening. 4 and 5 are contingencies, and we'll cross those bridges on another time, right? But there's ways to fix it, is all I'll say
Yes.
today. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what do you guys enjoy most about working for TIPS and in the PO compliance departments?
Okay. Kelly's going to edit this.
Okay.
Collections, birthday parties, holidays, getting off early.
Come
Uh,
on now.
Come on, Kara. What else? Um,
You're on a roll, girl.
I
donuts on
love it.
Friday. Uh, let's see what else.
Callie's cracking up.
Okay, edit all that out. Um,
Maybe not.
for me, I worked in the school world before I came to TIPS, so I know kind of both sides of it. Also had my own business, so I know that vendor side of it as well. I think TIPS is a very well oiled wheel. I think we all have our processes down. I think all of our processes across the board work simultaneously with each other to keep this wheel going every day, all day long. We all get along in up and down this hall. We all know our lane, but we also know each other's lanes in case we have to ask or answer a question. And then we say, hey, but let me get you to the person that can really help you out. And I think that just makes it a great place to come to work every day.
That's awesome. Karen?
For me, I mean, a lot of what Vicky said, we're very customer service focused, and a lot of us come from a very long work history of customer service. It's very important to me. I treat my vendors and members and even my coworkers the way I want to be treated. I want, fast results and positive results, and a can-do attitude goes a long way. Um, and I'm numbers are my thing. I love numbers. So the fact that we are looking at numbers and verifying numbers and calculating numbers all day, that's just my love language.
It's a pleasure. No, that's great. So, obviously, there's the program managers who are essentially told, "Hey, let us be the point of contact for anything that may come up," right? And like Vicky said, I believe, we know enough to get things either taken care of, or if it's something that's as specific as logging into the accounting system, we can get them to accounting or get them to the right. But if anyone or any listeners, I say listeners because members and vendors both have their own questions. What is the best way to get support when they need support specifically with the PO?
We do. So we can definitely help them in our offices. The PO department, we do have the four of us that know the processes and know how the wheel needs to turn, right? But there are a lot of times that we will refer our members and our vendors to the applicable program manager. And
Yeah.
mainly we do that because um, you guys have the tools to help them. You have the time to do a Zoom meeting or the
Yep.
PowerPoint, or direct them to the podcast now, or you guys have those tools that you use when you go out and visit them or you go to the conferences. So we like to refer them, where it's like, this is how the preferred method is, but here is Michael Tucker's name and number. Give him a call. He can train all of you at one time instead of me just talking to one person right now. He can do a Teams meeting. And so we do like to do that. And we will do that with vendors and members, because we
Yep.
do have a lot of new vendors, sorry. Monthly we have the new vendors. And so some of them aren't quite sure why they got this TIPS contract. And so I know how to look at your quote and I know how to look at your pricing, and Karen knows how to update it. But as far as, how do I advertise it? How do I get more members to come to my company instead of X company? We like to be able to send them to the program managers.
Exactly. So the program managers are just that, and I always say, 95% of the time I'm the right guy. So, there are things that go above me, be it legal questions or accounting or things like that. But yeah, 95% of the time, your program manager, based on where you're at in the country, can solve that just as quick as a phone call or just as
Right.
quick as an email. So we love
Great
having it.
resource. Our program managers are our biggest assets. They're
That's
wonderful.
yeah.
Mhm.
We try to be. We try to be. So we've talked about all these resources. We've talked about all that's happening. What and where might members and vendors find different resources? We've mentioned, things like the update pricing document, the the member PO process, right? Uh, Karen, Karen or Vicky, either one. Can y'all just quickly summarize some documents that you find helpful for both sides of the purchasing fence here?
Sure. The on our TIPS public website, you can find a link to the document for the member PO process. If the vendor has resellers, there will be a reseller tab. So if you go to a vendor profile and there's not a reseller tab, it's because they haven't listed any. But if they do offer or have resellers, there will be a tab for that. And once you click on that tab, you will have access to the reseller process form, which is just a step-by-step guide on, what that purchase process is going to look like. And there's also a form that the reseller can access to fill out to submit to us, which really, really streamlines the process. And then there's additional forms. If you're a vendor and you go to your vendor profile login, there are forms there that addresses how to update your pricing. There's a vendor portal user guide. There's a document that addresses tariff and surcharges for pricing updates and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And quite frankly, our marketing team does a great job of making those documents. They're very easy to understand, even if you're brand new to public procurement. And if, again, that's a quick reference on what's available and what's out there. If you need help finding those documents or just want them emailed to you, reach out to your program manager. We send those out all the time. We'd love to get them to you so that you understand the process. I want to thank you both for taking time out of the busy day and joining us today and to talk about, the TIPS PO process and troubleshooting that and things like that. It was fun. I will say this for the agencies out there who are still listening, if you're not a TIPS member, we would love for you to join. Membership is entirely free. There are no costs to use our contracts, and there's no cost to get this price verification and this backing behind, like what we've said is the behind this national purchasing cooperative. If you would like to service these agencies and become a TIPS vendor, that is done by completing one of our competitively sealed contracts. We have some going out every first Thursday of the month, but reach out to your program manager based on where you are, and we can work on you responding to a contract and giving you some kind of best tips and practices that would then lead to you becoming awarded on a tips contract. We thank you so much for joining the podcast today. And while we're gone, I want you all to keep purchasing personal.